I am Pete Erickson. I'm the founder of Modev, and I'm very, very fortunate to be the executive producer of the very first NeuroTech event at CES. And yes, what a great industry. I feel very fortunate. 15 years ago when mobile apps came out, I decided to start a community around it called Modev, and it was stood for mobile development. And I found myself in this new time. I'd come out of my third startup, and it was kind of a new era. And I hadn't planned on Modev being a company. I just really thought it was a good idea to build community. I wasn't even monetizing it. But very quickly, that community grew and grew. I put on a conference and came home from that event and told my wife, I said, this is our new business, is building community is our business. So for 15 years, that's what I've been able to do. And I've been partnered with CES for 12 of those years. And we've done all kinds of really interesting events. Last year, when we were planning, tomorrow, we are producing what's called the AI House over at the Las Vegas Convention Center. But in our planning meetings last summer, I noticed they were putting a lot of emphasis on healthcare, and I've been interested in neurotech for quite some time. And it's very personal for me. I lost my mother in 2012 to ALS, and went through that journey where she lost her ability to walk and move and speak. And so I've always followed the technologies that can help improve the lives of people with ALS, and neurotech is one of those technologies. I also lost a younger brother to mental health, and neurotech is one of the technologies that has so much promise when it comes to mental health. And so it's been something I've been following and I've been interested in personally, and it all sort of came full circle last summer when I presented to the CES team that they really should be covering this more closely, and they asked if I would go ahead and produce this event. So this is the culmination of my personal experience, my professional experience, and what I must say, this journey of putting this day together is what a fascinating industry. And I think you all know that neurotech isn't really one industry, it's a number of different industries that sort of converge around this notion of neurotech, right? And today's an exploration of all those different facets of the neurotech landscape. And I'm so, so grateful for all of you that answered the call to come and be a part of this event. Our goal is to make sure that we share really truthful and trusted information. And it's really what's kind of like the next iteration of me and Modev here as we go into 2025 is our why has always been that we believe human connection is vital, and that's still true. However, now our why has evolved to we believe trust is earned, and we are in this trust economy. And now in this era of AI, it's more important than ever. Trust is earned when we build relationships that are based on real, truthful information with one another, and we share that information openly. So I encourage companies to move from selling to teaching to educating the market on terms of what's happening. 87% of CIOs cite that confusion in the industry is one of their #1 problems. That confusion is resolved when people share open information, the research that they have that is the reason they're in business in the first place. And I'm very proud that today's event, today's NeuroTech event, is one solid day of really solid information for people that are at the forefront of this exciting technology landscape. They're not selling, they're sharing information. I want to see as many relationships blossom out of this room as possible. And if you want to have a conversation about what I call trust-driven growth, which is going to drive the future of our business, I would love to have that conversation with you. I'm very passionate about this, as you may tell, and I'm very, very honored that you are all here today. Now, this first panel that we're kicking off is being moderated by somebody who I've been fortunate enough to know through the work that we've done in AI. She is a multi-time AI technology company founder, having been co-founder of a company called Radius.AI that really sought to revolutionize AI from the standpoint of near-field technologies and what's around us. She then has gone on to found a new company called The Pause, which is all around menopause. And I'm a 58-year-old man married to a 54-year-old woman. And let me tell you what, menopause is a big part of our world right now. And it's as much of a part of a man's world as it is a woman. Women have to go through it, but us men, we can play a lot bigger role in menopause and understanding menopause. And so I encourage you to all do that, us men in the room. But Susan also she's led a really exciting career. She shared the stage with leading folks like Tony Robbins and Mel Robbins and so many others. She co-authored a book with Jack Canfield, and she's just done so much. She's got an engineering and business degree from MIT Sloan. You might have heard of it. She is the real deal, technical. She's also a human being who understands how to build relationships. So she can talk technology, she can talk humanity, and I want us to give a huge round of applause for our opening moderator, Susan Sly. Susan, come up, please, take the stage. You guys just mind humoring me with a little wave?
All right.
Thank you, and Susan, get in here for one quick selfie with her.
Absolutely.
Yes. Everyone, give Susan a huge wave. Thank you so much. Susan, there you go. Thank you. All right.
Let's give it up for Pete. Seriously, this is a labor of love, and all of the Modev team, Gustavo and the AI folks, like a huge round of applause, guys. So I know this is NeuroTech, and I know that many of you are PhDs, some of you are MDs, some of you come from science backgrounds, you're CIOs. However, what is one thing we all have in common? Humanity. Thank you, Melanie. Humanity. How many of you, like Pete, have had someone in your life that has been touched and deteriorated by a neurological disorder? A show of hands. So, on July 10th of this year, I got the call that no child wanted to get. My dad, Joe, a brilliant engineer who had worked on the pacemaker, died. Dropped dead. He was 84 years old. But prior to my dad's passing, I started to notice his neurological decline. I would call him, I'd say, "Daddy, what are you up to?" And I'm a daddy's girl, I was. And he'd say, "I'm in my garden today." We're half Chinese, so he was planting his Chinese melons. Or he was playing chess, or he was going for lunch, and I watched it slowly and surely begin to decline. How many of you have aging parents and you're seeing this happening? It's hard, right? And I think very deeply, if there was one gift toward the end, my dad was forgetting things. He was so interested. He was still doing his YouTube channel and building websites and things up until about a year before he passed. But his mind gave out before his body did. And so what I would ask as we go into this panel is that we really think about the future of this technology and the gift that it can bring. I can promise you, when the team asked me to moderate this panel, I was excited, but I was also intimidated. The people I'm about to bring to the stage are so brilliant that literally I could tap them on the shoulder at 2 a.m. and have them tell you a deep dive into robotic hands or neuroscience, and they can just say it like many of us could spout out our children's names. And so I'm going to ask you a question before I bring them up. How many of you want 2025 to be an increase year for you? You just want something more in your life, more in your career, just by show of hands. Thank you for the 6 of you who are honest. The rest of you must have really epic freaking lives that I'm going to ask it again. Because it takes a lot of courage to be honest. How many of you want something more this year for yourself? Thank you for that honesty. So I'm going to ask you, what does it take to achieve more in your life? It starts with curiosity. And to be curious, you've got to be courageous. So I'm going to ask you to not be on your phone while the session is going on, because these people have a combined of something I calculate around 12 or 50 years of education. They're parents, some of them. They're humans. They're dealing with a lot of stuff, and they flew here to be able to share their knowledge with all of you. So I'm going to dare you to be curious and to have the courage to be present. Does that sound fair? Mm-hmm. I can see all of you. I have 4 kids. All right. So I'm going to bring some amazing people to the stage, and I'll be very candid. One wants to be a cranberry farmer. One goes skydiving for fun. One has been to 3 Taylor Swift concerts, and one has a black belt in Taekwondo, and I'll let you guess. So the first person I'd like to bring to the stage, he is the co-founder and CEO of Motif NeuroTech, which is a company that is developing a therapeutic BCI, brain-computer interface, we all know what that is, to treat and track mental illness. He is a professor of electrical and computer engineering at Rice University. He's led groundbreaking research for DARPA. He's been published in over 60 peer-reviewed papers and prestigious journals. And his latest innovation, the DOT implant, is minimally invasive, and it's designed to regulate mental and cognitive stress. So he is absolutely phenomenal, and I'm going to share their introductions and then bring them up, and I'll leave you at the edge of your seat guessing who is who. The next is the founder and CEO of Psyonic, which is a company revolutionizing prosthetics with the ability hand. This is the fastest and most advanced bionic hand on the market, and the first to provide a sense of touch. He is driven by a passion to make prostheses affordable. He has secured Medicare coverage for the ability hand and even set up the Ability Fund to those in need. He has a PhD in neuroscience. He's an engineer. He has been recognized by the MIT Technology Review. Go Sloanies. Any other MIT folks in the house? Love you, thank you. All right, Tim the Beaver, that's our mascot there. All right, the next person is the founder and CEO of Phantom Neuro, and this is a company enabling lifelike control of robotic prosthetics and exoskeletons. With a background in reconstructive surgery research at Johns Hopkins, he has translated scientific advancements into minimally invasive neurointerfaces. He is a TEDx speaker, a thought leader in machine-human interfacing, and potentially a future cranberry farmer at heart. And the next and final amazing human is a trailblazer of responsible AI and leads the AI products at IEEE standards, or IEEE as we say. With over 20 years of experience, this person is a champion for ethical, equitable, and impactful AI solutions. Her passion for neurotechnology stems from her early work in healthcare and ongoing advocacy for wearable tech. She is a mentor. She's helped thousands of students, particularly young women in STEM, and she has an incredible, incredible heart of passion for AI ethics. So, with that, I would love you to stand up, stand up, stand up, stand up, and welcome Jacob Robinson, Aadeel Akhtar, Connor Glass, and Isha Jaganathan. Give them a huge round of applause. Thank you. All right, we're gonna have some fun. I probably reversed this, Gustavo, but just love me anyway. Love me as I am. That's what I say to my husband after 25 years, because I'm not changing. All right, so let's have some fun. The first person I want to put on the hot seat here is, normally I don't read all the backgrounds when I host a panel, but they're so impressive I didn't want to miss anything. So Jacob, the DOT implant. This is interesting as an innovative mental health treatment, and I think a lot of us have thought about mental health as this human to human, and you're thinking about this in a very different way. So can you talk us through how does it work, and how is this really breaking new ground for cognitive tech?
My mic is...
Roll with it.
Okay, all right. Oh, thank you. Okay. Wow. So, first of all, I'm intimidated after your introduction. I feel like I have a lot to live up to now, but thank you very much. So, you bring up a really interesting point, and this is something that, you know, I've been thinking about a lot as an academic, and then our whole team has been thinking about it at Motif, and that is the idea that we often think about mental health as something that's almost intangible, right? Like it's an interaction that we have with another human being. It's somehow something that might even be outside the realm of science. But when we work in neuroscience, and many of you guys are know this, so I apologize if this sounds obvious to you, but when we think about mental health disorders, we know fundamentally these are biological problems, right? It's activity in the brain that's overactive, underactive. If it's a biological problem, there can be a biological solution, right? Mental health manifests in a way that really affects the way that we think about interacting with other humans, but fundamentally it's a biological disorder that should be no different than cancers, right? And so we should be able to come up with engineering or technological solutions. And that's what we're working on at Motif. It's the idea that there are brain circuits that are underactive, and we could use electronic devices to increase that activity. What we're developing as our first product is a DOT. It stands for something, but really that's not important. I'm an academic, so I know how to make clever acronyms out of things. Basically, think about something really small. It's a really small thing that gets implanted in the bone over the brain. So unlike some other neurotech companies that like to stick things in the brain, yuck. We put devices in the bone and never come in contact with the brain tissue. That allows us to be a 20-minute outpatient procedure. You go home that day, it's invisible. And from that position in the bone, we can stimulate a specific circuit associated with executive function. So people, if you know people who might suffer from depression, for example, that illness is manifest by an inability to initiate action. It's not like people don't know that they need to get out of bed in the morning and take a shower and call their friends. They physically cannot do that because their biology doesn't let them, because their brain is stuck in a circuit that prevents them from initiating activities. And so by stimulating the executive function network, the central executive network, CEN, we can help people regain the ability to initiate actions in the world. So it is an electronic device. Think of it like a medical device, sort of like a pacemaker, but one that can engage the brain circuits associated with mental health. And we can also record activity and really be able to create biomarkers. I think what we're going to see a transition to is from treating mental health disorders based on patient surveys and interviews with your psychiatrist to having a data-driven way that we can address neural circuits in the same way we have interventional cardiology, and you have devices and drugs, and you have physicians who are helping in recovery.
It leads me to ask you this whole concept of, and I love the putting it on the bone, not directly in the brain, but to having something implanted. And to give everyone, one of the big pieces for all of us is the humanness, and I know for Pete, we were having this whole conversation on trust, is the humanness behind the technology. And I want us to, we're at CES, there's a lot of cool tech, but what is the humanness? What does that need? And just as a sidebar, I'm originally from Canada. I won't say A, but we'll speak a little French if you want to do that. The big thing is, do you know right now the MAID-assisted suicide program in certain parts of Canada, 1 in every 10 deaths is assisted suicide. And a significant portion is due to mental health. When people literally feel that there's no life left to live and that is their only option. And so I think about the beauty of what you're doing, but I also think about this concept about how are you going to get past the people who really need it but are so intimidated by actually a 20-minute surgery to put something on a bone?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I think we've worked with a group of we call them lived experience advisors, people who either themselves suffered from treatment-resistant depression or they have loved ones who suffered from treatment-resistant depression. And what we learned is that illness is so debilitating that they are looking for anything to help them, right? So I think adoption, this is what I think is like a common misconception, is that we hear about technology and the first thing we think about is like, oh, it's like an implant or whatever. When you talk to people who suffer from these conditions, the first thing they ask you is this going to get you better? Or what they care about are outcomes. And I think that when we look at the future of technology, it could be like what we're doing, stuff that Connor's doing, we should be looking at what kind of benefit are we going to create for people. And if that benefit is so great, and it's a 20-minute outpatient procedure, or even if it's a more complicated neurosurgical procedure, when we create outcomes that are dramatic and life-saving for these people, that's where we're going to see adoption. So I would love to see the conversation about how can we make our technology so good that people can't wait to have that opportunity to live a better life.
I love that. I really believe what you're doing is going to save lives. It's going to change families. So thank you. I want to go to our future cranberry farmer, Connor. So Phantom Neuro is it's enabling incredible control over prosthetics. And how do you envision that human-machine interface over the next few years? And just as a quick follow, how many of you saw Jensen's keynote last night? Yes, isn't that amazing? And there's this whole concept, it's either we're a human or a robot, but looking at this ability, especially with prosthetics, to humanize this robotic aspect of what it is we can do. So how do you see that?
I absolutely think that the line between human and robot is going to blur over the coming 5-10 years, like very, very quickly. So the robotic side of the house is absolutely incredible. We saw all these humanoid robots. We've seen incredible prosthetic limb robots, such as the Ability Hand over here. But what most people don't recognize is that there's this gap in terms of control and how somebody actually can harness that robot to benefit their life. And so people, almost everybody probably in this room has seen some really cool example, I'm assuming since you're here to NeuroTech talk, has seen a really cool example of somebody with limb difference or somebody that's lost their limb controlling a robotic prosthesis as if it's their natural limb, like a Luke Skywalker arm, and assume, oh my gosh, this is incredible, like amputees are utilizing these robotic prosthetics and life is amazing. The reality is that that's very far from the true reality. Actually, amputees are barely able to utilize robotic prosthetics any better than they're able to utilize open and close, what's called a body-powered hook prosthesis that was created at the time of the Civil War. So most amputees, especially for upper limb, are still utilizing, if they're actually utilizing prosthesis at all, something that was created in the Civil War. Most people are not utilizing robotic prosthetics because there's no control interface to actually make them function like an intact limb. And so I think with technologies like what we're creating in Phantom Neuro, we're on the cusp of enabling patients to actually be able to harness robots as if they're natural body parts, meaning controlling a robotic appendage, whether it's an upper limb or a lower limb or even a computer or something, as if it is a direct extension of the human body, the identical way to how a person with intact limbs controls their limbs. And so I believe that very soon we're going to be able to harness this massive emerging field of robotics in order to make kind of super able people in a way that maybe are even higher functioning people with intact limbs. So it's really incredibly exciting time.
You touched on this intersection between, full-on autonomous robots and bringing robotic parts into our lives. And who are some of the groups that you're most excited to help? Because I know you have a tremendous heart of service, and I creeped everyone's background before we did this, and I know there are some particular groups that you're like so fired up to make a difference in their lives. I know that wasn't a planned question, but just roll with it, dude.
Yeah, no problem. So I'm incredibly passionate about people with function-limiting disabilities, right? And in particular, I'm very passionate about people with war trauma and life after war trauma in particular. So I've been to Israel and Ukraine and other places trying to help in that effort. So I think that these technologies that really all of us up here are creating are going to be able to help these populations of people really regain control over their lives, which is pretty incredible.
Thank you so much for sharing that. Every time I see a Tunnels for Towers, how many of you have seen a Tunnels for Towers commercial? Yeah, and every time I see someone who's come back and they're missing a limb, now I think about you and I think about the good work you're gonna do.
Thanks a lot.
Aadeel, you have every single person on this panel. I'm just so in awe of them because they're working on this area from such a heart space. And Aadeel, the inspiration for your company was really seeing, I believe it was a young girl, and just being, and going, oh my gosh, how can I use this giant brain of mine? You make Mensa look like, gummy bears. Like I don't even know. How can I use what I know, plus what's in my heart to make a difference. And so affordability and accessibility are huge for you, and this is often a massive hurdle in neuroprostheses. And so how did you achieve Medicare coverage? I actually want to know, I wish I could take notes, so we're recording this, for the ability hand. Like, how did you do that?
Yeah, absolutely. And just to give a little bit about that background that you were mentioning, so I've been wanting to build prosthetic limbs and bionic limbs ever since I was 7. My parents are from Pakistan, and I was visiting. That's the first time I met someone missing a limb. She was my age, 7 years old, missing her right leg and using a tree branch as a crutch. So it inspired me to go into this field. And so accessibility has always been at our core in everything that drives everything that we do at Psyonic and everything that we build. And in talking with hundreds of patients and clinicians when we were first designing the ability hand that I'm holding right here, one of the big things they said was that if you can design something that A, is more advanced than everything, but also B, covered by Medicare, then you've got something really special. And what that did is it put us in a frame of mind that we can't use the most expensive technology to make the most advanced bionic limb that's out there. We have to use things that are commercially available off the shelf. We have to use them in different ways. So for example, the fingers on our hand are flexible. We used to 3D print them, but if you give someone a 3D printed hand, they're going to break that thing within like minutes of using it. And so what we did is we used 3D printed molds, and then we used silicone and rubber to make these hands more robust than anything else that's out there. So I've dropped this 30 feet from the roof of my house and survived, put it in the dryer for 10 minutes. I arm wrestled a para-triathlete national champion and lost. So this thing can take quite a beating, right? And in getting our price point down enough, we were able to actually hit that price point that Medicare would cover in the U.S. And that expanded access from 25% of patients who could afford this hand to 75% of patients. So that was really great. Now that being said, there's still 25% of patients who are underinsured or uninsured. And so we started this initiative called the Ability Fund, where every $25,000 that's donated completely covers all the clinical services and the device for someone who can't afford the hand, but also a leg. And this is typically $100,000 to $150,000 worth of materials and services that we can do for $25,000. And we just had our very first user, Ivan Krastev. He's a high school student who lost his hand, or was born without his hand. And just over Christmas, we had a donor actually donate the full $25K, and he was able to get a hand. And so we're incredibly excited to expand those efforts too, so we can really get this hand to as many people as we know.
That's so incredible. Doesn't that just make you all feel so good? Yeah, let's clap for that. Thank you. Seriously. And do you sleep with the hand beside your bed?
Maybe.
Excellent. Usha. You're so focused on responsible AI. And Usha and I hail from the great state of Arizona, and Usha is known in our community for being an incredible role model for young women in STEM. As an aside, the unsolicited plug for AI House tomorrow, less than 22% of AI workers are women. Less than 22%. And as an aside as well, less than 2.5% of women-led pitches to VCs get funded, yet women-led startups are 68% more profitable. And so if we're not investing in young women, that's a problem. And if we're not showing them that it is possible to be a technologist and to be a tech founder, we're doing a disservice to our daughters and our sisters and our partners. So Usha, this is you live and breathe this. So I want to ask you, how are we going to, for neurotechnology specifically, how are we going to ensure equitable access to neurotechnology like BCIs? And I'm going to throw this one at you just because it's fun to put you on the spot. I told you I would. And especially I want to ask you about how do we ensure that young women come and explore this field?
Wonderful question. Thank you. So I'm an outsider of the NeuroTech world because we have such deep expertise of all these three paths, brilliant panel. My focus has been in the AA in the last 10 years in the AA space, and my work has been in the ethical technology development, whether it is products, whether it's services, and I've also worked in the healthcare side for developmentally differently able children, and where we see children who are autistic, who come with a lot of brain development issues and disorders. So since then, I have been thinking about, I was thinking about, how we could go about, because most of my background has been in the database development, web programming, and then in the last 10 years, I moved into the AI. Every time when I talk to my dad, he will say, do everything with integrity. So all that got ingrained in my mind, and I said, okay, for all these ethical considerations, how do we do this? And when Susan talked about the equitable access. So how do we provide that equitable access, especially when we are talking about brain and computer interface, where we are talking about very delicate systems, right? So and we are talking about where we are putting our human intelligence and trying to make the machines intelligent better. And when we are doing it, when all the judgment, everything, we do it much better than the machines. But today we see like how the AI agentic era we are in, where we could be able to utilize, how we can utilize the AI for good and try to make it as much as providing that equitable access. And by doing that, we are putting that, because until today, like majority of the people feel like responsible AI is more of theoretical and not actionable. But we are putting the theoretical into practice. It's not about the bunch of frameworks people sit and create in the organizations. We try to take those frameworks and put it in practice and try to see how we can provide that equitability, how we can make sure the data is trained well, and how we can make sure the algorithms are trained so that we could be able to not perpetuate any biases. No, we make sure that we have that equitable access to all. And you also mentioned about how to encourage young women. So I do a lot of outreach, and majority it's like voluntary outreach, like for community basis, like community user groups. I hold it in mostly in Arizona. I go to the nearby libraries and try to bring children who have come as refugees. And you should see the curiosity that Susan was mentioning about. The girls really want to go into medicine, or they want to become a lawyer. It's not like they want, or they want to become a psychologist. And all these, when we grew up, especially in India, it's like it's slated. Either you become an engineer or a doctor or a lawyer. It's like but it is not like that. They come with so much passion, and I go and help them in how to code. It doesn't have to be so that they get an understanding and get inspired how to code. So that is how I do it, like baby steps I'm taking, one person at a time. And by doing that, also my children also help. So we take part in this National Refugees Day, World Refugees Day, so that young women in STEM could be able to be appreciated of. They could be able to they are encouraged to come and participate, and they can go and do majority of the refugees come either to Phoenix or New York, and there are so many refugee children out there, and majority of them that we see are both young boys and girls, and it's very important if we could be able to inculcate right from the childhood, so that they know like what do they want to do to grow up.
That's incredible, and thank you so much, Usha, for your heart.
Sorry, I took your time.
No, I want everyone to think about just for a moment, just let us pause for a moment. How many of you are doing what you're doing now because someone had the courage to tell you that you could, or it was a possibility for you, right? I failed calculus my first year at university, but my dad kept believing I'd go to MIT, right? Like, who knew, right? The girl who failed calculus. Speaking of girls, girl dad, 3 Taylor Swift concerts. What's your favorite?
That was supposed to be a guess.
No, well, what's your favorite Taylor Swift song?
Oh, just one. Let's see. I do like All Too Well 10-minute version, Taylor's version, but Championing Problems is also a close second.
Do you think she should marry Travis Kelce?
No, that's too easy. I want, like, eventually yes, but I don't want the constant dinner time conversation to go away.
Okay. Speaking. Okay, so let me ask you this. Yes. So, I'm really curious about this because coming out of AI and this whole concept about where we're at, sitting with AGI, and we're sitting with this precipice of technology where humans are influencing the machines, but that intersection of where the machines influence the humans, and how are you navigating that motif with these ethical conversations about just because we can, should we be essentially neuromodulating these cognitive behaviors?
Yeah, this is a really tough one, and I get it being recorded. And every time I do a panel, something that come up to me and ask this question, so it may be on your mind anyway. Like, it's wild to think about a future where it could be possible with devices to modulate mental states. Right? That the ethical implications of that are not lost on us. In fact, we think about it every day. And inevitably, someone is like, whoa, like this sounds like the beginning of a Black Mirror episode, like hold the phone, like stop. And what we usually come back with is like, yes, there are potentials for misuse. At the same time, suicide rates among the youth have increased 140% over the last 10 years. Can we ethically not do something about that? And I think the answer is no, right? Like, we owe it to people who, through no fault of their own, are born, as though they were missing a limb, but instead they were born with a mental health disorder. It's invisible, it's a life-threatening condition, and we're losing these people. So can we not develop this technology? I think the answer is no. We absolutely have to do everything that we can. Now, we have to do it responsibly. We have to put guardrails on this. We obviously don't want to go into that dystopian future. But I think the answer is not to sit by and do nothing about it.
Absolutely. How many of you in the audience have had a family member, if you feel comfortable, a family member or a friend who's committed suicide? Yeah. And it's getting that phone call, or just being told it's awful, because the first thought is, what I could have done something, or what could I have done? Aadeel, the ability hands sense of touch is incredible. Like it's revolutionary. And so how does AI play into what you've created there?
Yeah, and actually this probably dovetails a lot with what Connor's building on the motor control side as well too. So with our touch feedback in the hand, there's a couple of things that we can do. So we can actually modulate the amount of force that the hand is doing. So we've had our users like grab raspberries without crushing them, like hollow eggshells while blindfolded, and then really flimsy cups of water without spilling them as well, because they can actually rely on the touch sensors to automatically slow down when they're grasping an object. So that's kind of this inherent AI where it's like, okay, the machine knows to slow down when they're grasping a particular object, but at the end of the day, the human is still in control. And what we want to do is we want to couple that touch feedback with better machine learning algorithms on the motor control side, which is a lot of the things that Connor is working on, where you can use advanced machine learning control to do things like individual finger control. And so you can couple that with like being able to touch an object, so that we're hoping in a couple of years we might have our first patients playing piano or typing on a keyboard again, because they'll have that level of dexterity and that level of haptic feedback.
That is such a beautiful future. How far away do you think that is?
Honestly, I think it'll happen within the next 5 years.
Oh my gosh, that's so exciting. The lives are going to change, and the gift that you're going to give people is amazing. Connor, I want to ask you, because I'm thinking back to Jensen's keynote, and again, my background coming from computer vision at the edge, so I think about this, how we have to train our models and then execute and get real world feedback in this whole loop. And so how are you using AI in terms of what you're building, if you feel free to disclose?
Yeah, absolutely. And I also want to say, I think someone's going to play piano this year. We're going to make it happen this year. So stay tuned. But
No
I
pun
think things,
intended, right?
from a control perspective, I think things are moving much quicker than people anticipate. But one thing I do want to point out is actually from a sensory feedback perspective, there's an important difference, not to take a tangent here for a second, but there's an important difference between the robot having pressure sensors and detecting that it's applying some amount of force to an object and then automatically having a feedback loop to stop that. What you ultimately want to have is that the person actually perceives the pressure that they're pressing and or the feeling of the sensation of whatever it is that they're touching. And we're still actually very far away from making that a reality. Now there are really cool, DARPA-related studies happening with like nerve cuffs and different things within a laboratory environment. But the hard part is how do you scale that technology? So, one thing that I think people should realize is that from a control perspective, we're really we're cooking with gas. But from a sensory feedback perspective, that's where things get much more challenging. And so I think that's going to go a little bit slower. In terms of artificial intelligence and how we're applying it, it's actually interesting because you would think that you want to do, the most high-powered, algorithm and neural networks and deep learning that you possibly could apply to a problem of signal decoding and control outputs, but that's actually not the case because what you're combating is latency and the ability to do edge compute with low power. And so when you're pushing for the latest, greatest algorithm or compute or whatever it might be, you're actually sacrificing battery life and latency along with that. And so we found a nice balance between more simplistic artificial intelligent models and not necessarily applying the most incredible, deep learning neural network that you possibly could, because we actually have this threshold that's actually in the literature noted for us. It's 300 milliseconds. 300 milliseconds is when people start to perceive a delay between trying to do something and actually executing that action. And so that's a pretty low threshold for us to have to meet. Fortunately, we're currently well below that threshold, but that means that you can't do a really complicated compute for that. And fortunately, we don't necessarily have to do that. And so it's a little different than what you might think. But I think as technology continues to develop over time, and you're able to do compute faster with lower power requirements, that we'll be able to capitalize on those advancements, but currently that's not possible.
Yeah, and to your point too, the latency is such a big issue, right? And so if any of you have implemented any form of edge, that's a whole peak next year's panel. All right, Usha, the final question to you, super quick. This is a big topic. So we have the guys who are building this amazing tech. There are ethical considerations. How do we balance the ethical considerations and the technological evolution so that the people who need to be really served get served?
Ethical consideration. Come again. The last sentence. What you said?
How do we balance the advancement of the technology for the people who really need it and the ethical considerations so the people who really need the technology get the technology?
Yeah. So first we need to have a proper guardrails, guidelines that we need to have put in place. And when we say ethical considerations, ethical is like more like the moral principles what we follow and how we put that into making it as a responsible AI innovation. And in order to make that happen, we need to make sure we are not misusing it, we are not coercing it, we are not trying to manipulate the interface. And for all those things, what type of regulatory frameworks we could bring in place, and what type of guidelines, the frameworks that we could adopt, and how we could be fairness aware, how we could be transparent. We need to have honest communication. Like, okay, if it is, whether it is non-invasive or invasive, how we are actually planting the chip, and or if it is a wearable, how they are doing it. So a complete documentation and some kind of a webinar or seminar for education awareness should be given. By doing all these things, this helps to prep so that, okay, this is what is expected, so that people know that this is what needs to be done. And also in IEEE, we have for an industry connection program. Let me tell you what is that. It's neurotechnologies for brain-machine interfacing. So we focus on that as well. And many of you in this room might know what IEEE is for. IEEE is for, it's more than a publishing house. We build standards. So we build standards for all the autonomous driving that you have, or even in your regular car, lane correction, everything. All those standards are set by IEEE. The oximeter that we used in COVID, the 802.11 wireless, all of these are set by IEEE standards. And so to serve the humanity, to serve the people, especially for who, whether they got a stroke or whatever their issue might be, how we could be able to educate them, create that awareness, create that beforehand, so they know what is to be expected when they are being implanted this chip. Because that is very important, so that I go by a framework called FIAT, fairness, ethics and explainability, because we need to explain what the model does. It shouldn't be a black box. And accountability and transparency. These are very critical in order to know, what is expected and how they could be able to get that implanting done.
That's powerful because a framework, we were having a conversation earlier today about how most enterprises are not adopting AI because they lack a framework, right? And starting with a framework and how IEEE provides the guidelines is critical. Well, first and foremost, I want to, everyone on your feet, let's thank our amazing panel here. Big round of applause for them. Thank you. And I want to thank all of you. And I'll leave you with this. We've heard about a lot of deep tech, a lot of incredible innovations, and if you're taking notes, it comes down to 3 things that they all have in common. The first is heart, the second is curiosity, and the third thing is the courage to execute on the vision. So with that, thank you all so much, and Melanie, I'll turn it back over to you. Thanks, everyone.